When the principal grabbed the microphone at my son's graduation and said those words about broken homes, I thought I had hit rock bottom. But when my ex-husband joined in with his cruel jab and my 8-year-old daughter suddenly marched toward that stage, I realized this day was about to become something none of us would ever forget. My name is Brina Mitchell, and if you had told me that morning that my little girl would end up teaching a room full of adults about dignity, I would have laughed through my exhaustion. You see, I'm one of those statistics people whisper about at PTA meetings, the single mom with bags under her eyes, rotating the same 3 outfits, always running 5 minutes late because my car needed a jump start again. That graduation day in May began like every milestone since my divorce, me trying to make everything perfect with almost nothing. I'd set my alarm for 4 in the morning to hot roll my hair because the curling iron had broken last month. I'd safety pinned the hem of my dress where it had caught on the car door. I'd looked in the mirror and whispered the same pep talk I'd been repeating for 3 years. You're enough, Brina. You're enough. My son Colton was graduating. 18 years old, 6 feet tall, and still the same boy who once cried because the letters on the page wouldn't stop dancing. Dyslexia, the doctor had called it. Just one more challenge stacked against us. And yet there he was preparing to walk across the stage in a cap and gown I'd paid for by working extra shifts scrubbing office buildings until my hands were raw. And then there was Piper. 8 years old, with the sharp attitude of someone who had already decided the world wasn't all that impressive. She'd insisted on wearing her favorite pink dress, the one with the tulle skirt that made her feel like a warrior princess. Her light-up sneakers blinked red and blue with each step. She'd been carrying her tablet everywhere lately, and I assumed she was playing games. I had no idea she was quietly turning herself into our family's historian. 3 rows ahead sat Garrett, my ex-husband. His new wife, Nayan, looked flawless under the auditorium lights, salon highlights shimmering as if to remind me of everything she had that I didn't. Garrett had even texted me that morning, "Try not to embarrass yourself today." 3 years since he walked out, and he still knew which buttons to push. Principal Wendell stood at the podium like he owned the place. At 55, with a suit that had seen better decades, he carried opinions that belonged to another century. He had spent 20 years at Riverside High sorting families like mine into categories likely to succeed, likely to fail, likely to become another statistic. The auditorium was crowded, 500 people filling every seat, grandparents, intact families with matching smiles and professional cameras, and then there was us. Me, Piper, and my mother, who had driven 2 hours with her bad hip just to sit by our side. "Mommy, why does Daddy have better seats?" Piper had asked when we walked in, her small voice carrying through the room. "Different doesn't mean better, baby." I told her, though we both knew that wasn't true. His seats were better. His car was better. His new life was better, at least from where we sat. The ceremony program felt heavy in my hands. Colton James Mitchell. Just ink on a page for everyone else, but for me it carried the weight of late nights, broken pencils, tears shed in public libraries, and the triumph of reading a full page out loud for the very first time. The speakers crackled. "Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. We're about to begin celebrating the class of 2024. My heart was already racing, though I couldn't imagine just how much it was about to shatter, before being rebuilt by an 8-year-old girl who had apparently been preparing for battle all along. I sat in that crowded auditorium wearing the best dress I owned, a faded blue one I'd bought at Goodwill specifically for this day. The tag had read $12, but the cashier, recognizing me from my weekend shifts at the diner, had quietly marked it down to $8. Small kindnesses like that kept us afloat. My hands trembled as I held a modest bouquet of carnations from the grocery store, $6 for flowers that were already starting to wilt. But Colton deserved flowers on his graduation day, and I was determined to give him at least that. Around me, the air smelled of perfume and cologne. Other parents were chatting with easy excitement, their manicures fresh, their handbags sleek, their cameras ready. I glanced at my own hands' chipped nail polish in a dusty rose I'd painted on myself at 2 a.m, after a long shift cleaning offices. Under the bright auditorium lights, the color looked more like weary pink than anything elegant. 3 rows ahead, Garrett sat with Nan. She wore a glittering diamond bracelet that caught the light every time she shifted, and she kept touching his arm, staking her claim as if she had won a prize. I suppose in her mind she had my ex-husband, now a successful real estate agent with a Mercedes and a shiny new life. But she hadn't known him when he was 22 and terrified about becoming a father, when he'd held my hand through Colton's asthma attacks, when he'd promised we'd face anything together. "Mommy, why is Daddy sitting over there?" Piper whispered, her small, sticky hand curling into mine. The candy I'd given her to keep her quiet left her fingers tacky. "It's okay, sweetheart," I whispered back. "We're here for Colton, remember?" She frowned, her voice louder this time. "But we're his family too. We should all sit together." A woman in front of us turned around with that look, half pity, half relief that her own life wasn't mine. I had grown used to that look at soccer games, parent-teacher conferences, and school plays. It was the look that said, "Thank God that isn't me." That's the thing about being the divorced mom, you learn to shrink yourself, to dodge the pitying stares, to smile like your heart isn't breaking a little every time your children wonder aloud why Daddy lives somewhere else. You learn to apologize for existing in spaces designed for intact families with wedding rings and joint checking accounts. My mother, sitting on the other side of me, placed her worn hand over my knee. She had driven 2 hours with her bad hip to be here, stopping twice along the way, to stretch, determined not to miss this day. "Breathe, Brina," she whispered. "Just breathe." And she was right. This was Colton's moment. God knew how hard he had fought for it. I thought of all those late nights at the kitchen table, me exhausted from the diner, and him frustrated by words that refused to sit still on the page. I remembered the tutors we couldn't afford, but somehow scraped the money together, for me selling my grandmother's china 1 piece at a time on Facebook Marketplace, just to cover the cost. I thought of the nights I quizzed him on vocabulary, while folding laundry for extra cash, the times he'd broken down, and said, "Maybe Dad's right. Maybe I'm just stupid." And I remembered Piper in her pajamas, storming into his room one of those nights and saying, "He's not stupid. His brain just works different. Like how I can't whistle but I can do cartwheels. Everyone's good at something." The auditorium buzzed with anticipation. Grandparents had their iPads ready to record. Mothers checked lipstick. Fathers pretended not to be glued to their work emails. The stage was draped in blue and gold streamers, Riverside High's colors, and a banner declared in glittery letters, "The future begins today." I looked around at the other families, the Johnsons proudly wearing Harvard sweatshirts for their son's acceptance. The Perezes, their daughter Maria, clutching the valedictorian speech she'd worked so hard to write. And then there was us, the Mitchells, the so-called broken family, with a son who had clawed his way across every obstacle just to stand among them. The lights dimmed, and Principal Wendell's voice thundered from the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Riverside High's graduation ceremony." His gray suit sagged, his red tie slightly crooked, but his voice carried the authority of a man who believed the room belonged to him. I squeezed Piper's hand tighter and forced a smile. Whatever happened next, we had earned our place here. Everything started as graduations usually do. Names were called alphabetically, one by one, each student crossing the stage to cheers and applause. Families stood, clapped, and snapped pictures as their children beamed with pride, clutching diplomas. The Andersons cheered for their daughter, the Brennans erupted for their son, the Castellanos waved balloons. Each graduate had their 30 seconds of glory, a handshake, a diploma, a photograph. The rhythm of it was comforting, predictable, beautiful in its simplicity. I sat there, palms sweating, waiting for the moment our name would be called. Colton was in the line of graduates, fidgeting with his cap, the way he always did when nervous. I watched him tug at his tie, the one I had tied for him that morning, with trembling fingers, muscle memory guiding me through something Garrett used to do. He looked so tall, so grown, yet in that moment, all I could see was the boy who once sat with me at the kitchen table, his small hands clutching a pencil like it weighed 1,000 pounds. "Jennifer Morris," the principal announced, and Jennifer floated across the stage, her parents leaping to their feet, their father whistling loud enough to pierce the ceiling. Laughter and cheers filled the room, exactly what graduation was supposed to be. And then my breath caught as the next name was called. Colton James Mitchell. My heart swelled. Piper bounced onto her seat to see better, her sneakers flashing like little beacons of joy. My mother squeezed my hand with all the strength her aching joints could muster. This was it, our moment, our victory over everything life had thrown at us. Colton stepped forward, his long strides carrying him across the stage nerves and pride mingling on his face. But then something shifted. Unlike the graduates before him, Principal Wendell didn't just hand him the diploma and move along. He kept his grip on it, kept Colton standing there under the harsh glare of the stage lights. He leaned into the microphone, his voice amplified for every corner of the auditorium to hear. "You know, folks, this young man here is what I call a surprise graduate." The words dropped like stones into silence. My stomach lurched as if I had missed a stair. The buzzing auditorium quieted. Parents who had been distracted by their phones looked up curious. Colton froze, his cheeks flushing red, his hands stiff at his sides. Colton here barely scraped by with the minimum GPA. Wendell continued, his voice laced with condescension. "Had to take summer school twice, required special accommodations for every test." He said special accommodations like it was dirty, like my son's learning differences were something to be ashamed of. But what can you expect? And then he looked directly at me. Not at Garrett in his fine suit. At me sitting in my Goodwill dress, clutching my wilted carnations. Kids from broken homes usually don't make it this far. Single mothers trying their best. But statistics don't lie. 70% more likely to drop out, twice as likely to repeat grades. The odds were stacked against young Colton here from the start. A few awkward chuckles rippled through the audience. Someone coughed. And then came the shift, the weight of hundreds of eyes, turning toward us, toward me. The divorced mom in the thrift store dress. My face burned hot shame, searing me from the inside out. Colton's hand trembled as he tried to take his diploma, but Wendell held firm, savoring the power of putting us in our place. And then from beside me, Piper's small voice rang out clear enough for those around us to hear. "That's not fair." It was like a blade slicing through the silence. Heads turned, a few whispers fluttered through the crowd. But Wendell wasn't finished. He smiled, feeding on the attention. This boy had every excuse to fail: divorced parents, financial struggles, learning disabilities. It's actually remarkable he made it at all. Sometimes these kids surprise us just by showing up. That was when Garrett stood. My ex-husband in his $1,000 suit, his new wife glowing beside him, rose to add his voice to the humiliation. He looked at Wendell, then at Colton, and said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Well, Mr. Wendell, you're not wrong. The boy's just like his mother, a disappointment, barely keeping their heads above water. At least he graduated, which is more than I expected when I was writing those child support checks." The room gasped. A grandmother near us muttered, "Oh my Lord." Phones started to rise, screens glowing as people began recording. And in that moment, my son's day, his hard-fought triumph, was being dismantled piece by piece in front of hundreds of strangers. Colton's face crumpled as he snatched the microphone from Principal Wendell. His voice cracked, fragile and raw. "Dad, please." 2 words, Just 2 words, but they split my heart open. The auditorium held its breath, everyone watching this boy plead for his father to stop turning his greatest day into a public crucifixion. Garrett didn't flinch. He puffed his chest, enjoying the spectacle. What I'm paying child support for what AC average student? Your mother couldn't even keep a marriage together, let alone raise successful kids. Look at them struggling for everything, wearing thrift store clothes to graduation. His words rang out like bullets, cruel and deliberate. Hot tears blurred my vision. Shame clung to me like a second skin. Phones pointed in our direction, recording every moment. Whispered judgments rose and fell, cutting me open in places I didn't know could bleed. My son stood humiliated, holding his diploma with shaking hands, tears streaking his cheeks. And I, his mother, felt more like a failure than ever before. Beside me, my 70-year-old mother began to rise, fury flashing in her tired eyes. I grabbed her arm, tugging her back down. Making a scene would only feed them more. We had learned to survive quietly, hadn't we? To endure. To swallow our dignity when the world decided we didn't deserve it. But as I sat there in silence, suffocating under humiliation, something unexpected happened. The sticky little hand I had been clutching was gone. My heart jolted. I looked down and saw Piper's seat empty. She was already on the move, her small body weaving through knees and purses, determined and unstoppable. "Piper, no, come back," I whispered frantically, but she didn't turn. Her pink tulle dress swished like armor. Her light-up sneakers blinked red and blue each step, like a flashing alarm rushing toward the crisis. She wasn't running. She was walking with purpose, each footfall steady, deliberate. The crowd seemed to sense something shifting instinctively to make space for her. Conversations halted. Phones swung to capture her. An 8-year-old girl was marching to the stage as though she had rehearsed this moment her entire life. She climbed the stairs slowly, her small hand gripping the railing. Against the wide, dark stage, she looked impossibly tiny, yet her posture, her set jaw made her seem larger than life. Wendell stepped back, confusion flickering across his face. Garrett half rose, then hesitated, unsure what his youngest child was about to do. And then her voice rang out, clear, confident, and impossibly strong for such a small girl. "Excuse me." The microphone trembled in Colton's hands. Piper reached for it, standing on her tiptoes. Her brother hesitated, then passed it down to her. She adjusted it clumsily, and suddenly an entire auditorium of 500 people was listening to the smallest Mitchell in the room. "I'm Piper Mitchell," she said, her voice steady as stone, "and I have something to show everyone about my dad." The room went silent. It was the kind of silence that presses into your chest, heavy and electric. Babies stopped fussing. Even the air conditioners seemed to hum softer. All eyes were on a little girl in a pink dress standing against 2 grown men who had tried to humiliate her family. From her backpack, the one with the unicorns on it, she pulled out her tablet. I had thought she wanted it for games to distract her during the long ceremony. My heart pounded. What was she doing? She looked directly at Wendell, then at Garrett, and spoke into the microphone. "Mr. Wendell said broken homes make broken kids. My daddy said mommy is a disappointment." She plugged her tablet into the projector cable she had brought with her. With surprising ease, she connected it to the system. The tech teacher, Mr. Barnes, stepped in silently to help her. The screen flickered to life above them. And then, with the confidence of a seasoned prosecutor, my 8-year-old daughter said, "But I've been keeping records." The massive projection screen lit up, filling the auditorium with Garrett's smiling face. His Instagram profile glowed 40 feet high, the perfect teeth, the expensive vacations, the shiny new life. "See this picture?" Piper said, her little finger pointing at the image of him and Nain, on a Hawaiian beach drinks, in hand sunset blazing behind them. He posted it on March 15th. That was the same month he told Mommy he couldn't afford Colton's SAT prep classes. Gasps rippled through the audience. Parents leaned in, murmuring, recognizing the truth in the timestamps and captions. "This is his boat." Piper continued swiping with a small, determined finger. A photo appeared of Garrett standing proudly beside a gleaming $28,000 vessel, the caption tagged by the dealership congratulating him. He bought it 2 weeks ago. Colton needed glasses for 2 years before Mommy could save enough money. They cost $300, but Daddy said he couldn't help. Garrett surged to his feet, panic breaking through his polished facade. "Piper, sweetheart, that's enough," he stammered, voice tight. But without missing a beat, she turned her voice sharp as a whip. "I'm not done. Sit down, Daddy." And he did. The man who had controlled me with words, with absence, with intimidation, sat down because an 8-year-old told him to. She swiped again. A screenshot of his Venmo appeared, a payment for golf club dues. $2,000. This was the same week Daddy said he couldn't help Mommy buy my school supplies. Her voice didn't shake. She wasn't embarrassed. She was fierce, exposing him piece by piece, truth by truth. Beside me, my mother grabbed my hand. "Did you know she was doing this?" she whispered. I shook my head, speechless. My baby had been collecting evidence, preparing like a soldier for a war I hadn't even known was coming. She had been watching me cry quietly at night, listening to Garrett's excuses, and turning all of it into ammunition. "I have more," Piper said, and swiped again. A shaky video began to play. The timestamp showed 11:47 p.m. 3 weeks ago. The camera was unsteady, filmed from a child's hands, but it showed our kitchen table. Bills spread across the surface like a battlefield. And there I was in my diner uniform, coffee stains still on my apron, holding the phone to my ear. My voice echoed through the speakers. "Yes, I understand the electricity will be shut off if I don't pay by tomorrow. I get paid Friday. Can you please just give me 2 more days?" The video showed me hanging up, lowering my head into my hands for 3 brief seconds, before standing, grabbing my cleaning supplies, and heading out for the night shift. My humiliation was laid bare for everyone to see. I wanted to crawl into the floor. But then I looked at Piper standing there, proud, defiant, and I realized she wasn't exposing me. She was honoring me. The screen changed again. New timestamp, mid-afternoon at the public library. Colton sat on a carpet with a small group of children, reading slowly, carefully, encouraging them. His voice came through the video, steady and kind. "That's perfect, Marcus. You're not dumb. Your brain just needs a different path to get there, like taking a different road to the same place." Piper's voice narrated, live. "This is my brother. He volunteers teaching little kids to read because he remembers how hard it was for him. He doesn't get paid. He just doesn't want anyone to feel stupid for learning differently." The audience shifted again, wiping tears, whispering softly. My son, humiliated minutes earlier, was now being revealed as something extraordinary. And then came the video that nearly split me in two. The timestamp read 2:15 a.m. The camera angle showed the back seat of our old car. My hands gripped the wheel, my face streaked with tears. I remembered that night all too well. I had just found out rent was going up, while Garrett had missed another child support payment. Piper's small voice narrated through the microphone. "This is my mommy crying, because she had to choose between paying rent or buying Colton's graduation cap and gown. She chose the cap and gown. We ate ramen for 2 weeks. She told us it was because she loved ramen. She doesn't love ramen." The auditorium fell utterly silent. You could hear people sniffling, hear the shudder of restrained sobs. Some parents openly wept, clutching tissues, hugging their children closer. And still, Piper pressed forward, steady as a heartbeat. "Mr. Wendell, you said statistics don't lie. So here are my statistics." The screen shifted to a PowerPoint slide, childish purple crayon font across the top. "The Real Statistics of the Mitchell Family" by Piper Mitchell, age 8. On the screen, Piper's first slide filled the room with words that looked like they'd been typed in a child's play font, but the content hit harder than anything Principal Wendell had said. "Mommy works 74 hours a week," she read, her little voice steady. "She's missed 0 parent-teacher conferences. She's read us 2,847 bedtime stories." I counted. Laughter bubbled through the crowd, but it wasn't mocking. It was tender, admiring. "She's made 5,475 peanut butter sandwiches. That's just for school lunches, not even counting weekends." The audience chuckled softly again, wiping tears from their eyes. She clicked to the next slide. A calendar filled the screen, every square scrawled with colorful notes in her uneven handwriting. "She's given 14,600 hugs when we cried. She stayed up 247 nights when we were sick. She's walked 1,836 miles to work when the car was broken because she gave her last money to pay Colton's school fees." The room was hushed, hanging on every number. Then she clicked again. The slide changed. "Daddy has shown up to 12 events in 3 years." Gasps cut through the quiet. The contrast was too stark to ignore. Piper swiped once more. A photo of Colton's acceptance letter appeared next to his scholarship award. The room erupted in murmurs, excitement building. Piper lifted her chin. "My brother got into college with a 3.2 GPA while battling dyslexia, working part-time at the grocery store and helping raise me. He wrote his essay about overcoming challenges. The scholarship committee said it was the best essay they'd read in 10 years. That's not barely passing, Mr. Wendell. That's extraordinary." And then it happened, the sound of clapping. It started in the back, hesitant at first, then spread like a wave rolling forward until 500 people were on their feet, applauding, cheering, whistling. Some shouted, "Bravo." Others wept openly. The energy in the auditorium shifted completely away from ridicule and shame toward awe and respect. But Piper wasn't finished. She raised her hand for silence, and incredibly, the audience obeyed. One by one, voices fell quiet until you could hear nothing but the hum of the projector. She turned slowly, deliberately, and locked eyes with Garrett, who had shrunk in his seat, his wife trying to hide behind the program in her lap. "Daddy," Piper said, her small voice trembling for the first time. "You said we're disappointments, but you're the one who left. You're the one who chose money over memories. You're the one who forgot that love isn't about what you can buy. It's about who shows up." Her voice cracked, but she pressed forward. "We're not broken. You broke yourself when you walked away." Gasps filled the room again. Then silence. Piper turned back to the microphone, lifting her chin. "My mommy says family isn't about being perfect. It's about being there, and she's always there. Even when she's tired. Even when she's scared. Even when she only has $4 in her bank account, she's there." The auditorium erupted. Parents leapt to their feet, stomping, clapping, cheering. Some were crying, others shouting encouragement. My son pulled his sister into a hug right there on stage, both of them sobbing, holding each other tight. I didn't care who was watching. I ran up the aisle, tears streaming freely down my face. I wrapped my arms around them, and my mother joined, limping quickly despite her bad hip, folding herself into the embrace. The 4 of us clung to each other, a tangled mess of love and relief, as the room roared around us. And at the center of it all stood Piper, clutching her tablet, our tiny warrior in a pink dress and flashing sneakers, proving that sometimes the smallest person in the room carries the biggest truth. I cupped Piper's tear-streaked face in my hands, hardly able to believe what she had just done. "How did you do all that?" I whispered through my sobs. Her eyes, red and shining, looked back at me with fierce honesty. "Mrs. Rodriguez from next door helped me with the computer stuff," she admitted. "But I've been collecting evidence for months. I knew somebody would say something mean about us eventually. I wanted to be ready." Mrs. Rodriguez said, "Documentation beats conversation every time." My mother let out a choked laugh behind me, shaking her head in awe. On stage, Principal Wendell looked like he wanted to melt into the floor. His face flushed crimson, his shoulders slumped. The school board president, Mrs. Patterson, was already storming up the aisle, her face thunderous, a silent promise that this display of cruelty would not go unanswered. Garrett, meanwhile, was gone. He had fled the auditorium, Nain trailing after him, her high heels clicking frantically across the polished floor. They had left behind nothing but the echo of their humiliation and the weight of truths too sharp to ignore. The ceremony continued, but nothing felt the same. The air itself seemed to buzz with a new energy. Parents who had never looked twice at me before now approached with tearful smiles, pressing my hand, telling me they understood, sharing their own stories of hardship and survival. One woman, Jennifer, slipped a business card into my palm. "I run a tutoring center," she said softly. "If Piper ever needs help, please call me. No charge. That little girl is going places." Other single mothers hugged me like we'd been lifelong friends. Fathers shook Colton's hand with genuine respect, telling him about their own struggles in school. One man, a lawyer in a crisp suit, bent down to look Colton in the eye and confessed, "I have dyslexia too." "Don't let anyone tell you it's a weakness. It just means your brain sees the world differently. That's power." And then came the ripple effects. A week later, Principal Wendell resigned under pressure after the school board received hundreds of complaints. The video, which Mr. Barnes had posted online with our permission, went viral, 3 million views in just 5 days. The comment section filled with stories of other single parents, other children dismissed as statistics, other families who had clawed their way through hardships. We were no longer alone. We were part of something bigger. Even family court could not ignore it. The video landed in front of a judge who had raised 3 children alone after her husband's death. She was not amused by Garrett's Hawaiian vacation, nor the boat, nor the golf club dues. She specifically referenced Piper's PowerPoint in her ruling. Garrett's child support was increased, the payments automatically pulled from his wages to guarantee consistency. He was ordered to pay back support, which covered Colton's first semester of books and supplies. But the real transformation happened within us. Colton began walking taller after that day, no longer hiding from his challenges. He started tutoring other kids with learning disabilities, charging just enough to help with his college expenses, but keeping it affordable for families like ours. By his sophomore year, he made the dean's list 2 semesters in a row. His dream now is to become a special education teacher, the teacher he once needed so badly himself. Piper, unsurprisingly, became the youngest member of the school's debate team in history. Her teacher says she has a gift for argument and evidence, a natural defender of those who need a voice. At 11 years old, she still keeps receipts, but now she uses them to help others, like the time she documented bullying incidents for a classmate so thoroughly that the school had no choice but to overhaul its entire anti-bullying policy. And me, I stopped shrinking. Inspired by my children's courage, I went back to school to become a paralegal, pouring the same grit and determination into my studies that had carried us through those years of ramen and overdue bills. Mrs. Rodriguez still watches Piper when I have night classes, refusing to accept payment, except my promise that someday when I can, I'll help another single mother the way she helped me. Our family isn't broken. It's rebuilt, stitched together with sacrifice, fueled by love. and guarded by a girl in light-up sneakers who understood that the truth is louder than shame. Every graduation season since, when I see polished family photos on social media or hear whispers about broken homes, I think back to that day. The day my 8-year-old daughter stood taller than any adult in the room. The day she transformed humiliation into triumph with nothing but a tablet, a pink tulle dress, and the unshakable belief that love can drown out shame. I remember the sound of 500 people rising to their feet, cheering for the smallest voice in the room. I remember Garrett's empty seat and Piper's steady hands. Colton's tears melting into a smile as he hugged his sister like she had saved his life, because in some ways she had. I remember realizing that being called a statistic means nothing when the truth of your life is measured not in percentages, but in resilient sacrifice and relentless love. Now when people look at us, they don't see a broken family. They see strength. They see Colton, who defied dyslexia and doubt to chase his dream of becoming a teacher. They see Piper, a girl who already knows the power of her voice and uses it to lift others. And they see me, not a woman defined by what was taken from her, but by what she fought to build brick by brick, long after the world counted her out. So no, we are not broken. We are rebuilt, and sometimes rebuilt is stronger than brand new. If this story touched your heart, if you've ever been called a statistic, if you've ever been made to feel like you or your family weren't enough, remember this: you are more than anyone's opinion of you. Love is enough. Showing up is enough. And your story is still being written. So please share this video with someone who needs that reminder today. Leave your story in the comments below so others know they're not alone. And don't forget to like and subscribe, because together we can keep proving that families like ours aren't broken, they're unbreakable.